The United States is winning the military war in the Middle East, but it is losing the economic one. After the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, oil prices have skyrocketed, and the impact is already beginning to be felt throughout the global economy. What we are seeing is a reminder that modern wars are not only fought with missiles and planes, they are also fought in energy markets, in supply chains, and in the prices consumers pay. The conflict between the United States, Israel, and Iran escalated at the end of February 2026. From a military standpoint, the advantage seems to be clearly on the side of Washington and its allies. The bombings have been constant on strategic Iranian facilities, including military infrastructure, energy depots, and targets linked to the nuclear program. Iran has responded with missiles, drones, and attacks on vessels in the Persian Gulf, but so far they have not managed to overcome the air and naval superiority of the United States. On the military front, the situation is increasingly resembling a war of attrition, in which Iran is holding out, but the United States maintains control over strategic areas. However, while the military balance seems to tilt toward Washington, the economic front tells a completely different story. The central element of this crisis is the Strait of Hormuz, a relatively small maritime corridor, but absolutely vital to the global economy. Approximately 1/5 of the world's oil consumption passes through this geographic point. Nearly 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas also passes through here. In simple terms, it is one of the most important energy bottlenecks in the global economic system. Since the conflict intensified, the strait has been practically closed. Iran, now under the leadership of Mojtaba Khamenei, has used control of this maritime route as a tool of strategic pressure. Naval mines, attacks on oil tankers, and constant threats have reduced maritime traffic to minimal levels. Several international shipping companies, including Maersk, have suspended operations in the area, while insurers have drastically increased costs for any vessel attempting to cross the region. The consequences of this blockade have been immediate. Brent crude oil, which serves as a global benchmark, has surpassed $100 per barrel and at times has approached $120. This represents an increase of more than 50% compared to the levels at the start of the year, when oil was trading around $60 or $65. U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude has also followed the same trend and remains close to $100 per barrel. When oil rises like that, the impact quickly spreads throughout the entire economy. Oil is not only used to produce gasoline or diesel, it is a fundamental input for transportation, fertilizers, plastics, chemicals, and practically all global logistics. In other words, oil is one of the pillars on which the modern economy operates. The effect is already beginning to be felt in multiple sectors. In the United States, gasoline prices have started to rise again, approaching $4 per gallon in some states. This phenomenon has been described by some analysts as warflation, an inflation directly caused by geopolitical tensions. And in an attempt to contain the impact, the International Energy Agency announced the release of approximately 400 million barrels of strategic reserves, one of the largest coordinated interventions ever seen in the energy market. However, strategic reserves only provide temporary relief. They can soften the blow for a few months, but they do not solve the structural problem if the energy supply route remains blocked. It is true that the United States is in a stronger position today than in the past. Thanks to the shale oil boom, the country has become one of the world's largest energy producers. This means it relies less on imports than it did a decade ago. However, even an energy powerhouse like the United States cannot completely isolate itself from global market dynamics. The price of oil is determined internationally. If the price per barrel rises, energy costs increase in virtually every economy, including the United States. This means higher inflation, increased transportation costs, pressure on businesses, and eventually a negative impact on economic growth. The biggest risk is that this situation drags on. Some analysts are already warning that if the closure of the Strait of Hormuz continues for several months, the price of oil could climb to $150 per barrel or even higher. In that scenario, the world could face a new energy shock, similar to what happened in the 1970s. Extremely expensive oil can trigger global inflation, economic slowdown, and even a recession. In the worst case scenario, the global economy could enter a period of stagflation, a particularly dangerous combination of low growth and high inflation. And that's why it's important for you to follow me, so you can stay well informed. Now, all of this leads us to an uncomfortable but very clear conclusion. In modern wars, winning militarily does not always mean winning strategically. You can dominate the sky, control the seas, and destroy targets on the battlefield. But if the conflict disrupts the planet's energy arteries, the economic cost can be enormous. The closure of a relatively small geographic point like the Strait of Hormuz has the capacity to shake the entire global economy, disrupt financial markets, and directly impact the wallets of millions of people. That's why the key question in this conflict is not only who will win the war on the military front. The deeper question is how much this confrontation will cost the world. In a system as dependent on energy as the current one, when oil prices skyrocket, not only one country is left with the final bill, it's ultimately paid by the entire planet.